ନାଇଁ ଏଟା ଗୋଟେ ଗାଡ଼ିରେ ବସିଥିଲି ଯେ କେବେ ଫୋନ୍ କର ମାନେ କାଇଁ ତମ ଲୋକ ପିଲା କାଇଁ ସେ ଜଏନ୍ କରୁନାହାନ୍ତି ତମେ ଯାହାକୁ କହିଦେଲ ଶିବ 22 ପିଲାଣି ସାଙ୍ଗେ ସାଙ୍ଗେ ତାକୁ ଦେଇଦିଅ
lost territory is still with the Pakistanis. It is called Pakistan occupied Kashmir. And at that time, Indian economy was very poor, very backward. I remember as a student going to school and getting midday meal. In that midday meal, it was the milk powder which was given to me. That milk powder came from the United States of America under PL 480 assistance. Our economy was that bad. Agriculture was backward, industry was backward. Even then, the skill of the Indian leaders in maintaining relations with other countries was so good that through the strategy of non-alignment, we befriended slowly about 100 countries, which became the part of the non-aligned movement. An economically backward country, politically newly independent, militarily very backward, could lead 100+ countries through the Cold War. Then, of course, war with China in 1962. 3 years later, Pakistan attacked. And 6 years later, yet again, we had to fight a war with Pakistan. The geography of South Asia became different, with Bangladesh emerging as an independent country. Now, the lesson that we learned in the foreign policy, in the fast-changing world, was unless a country is self-dependent, the country can become a pawn in the hands of big power. I'll give you just one example. When the Americans were fighting deeply in Vietnam, fighting for what? They're fighting against communist forces to promote a non-communist government. For 15 years, they were involved. Finally, the superpower did not win the war. But at that time, particularly in the 1960s, India had huge famine. Thousands of people were dying. There was no food. When the government of India would appeal for food assistance, that time the Americans would say that unless you support our policy in Vietnam, we are not going to give you food aid. And the advisors to the American president would advise saying, don't give food at one go to the Indians. Give some now, some later, so that they will keep coming to you asking for help. That was the situation. And when we fought war with Pakistan and China during the early years of an independent country, our focus that we wanted to be within India, it went to the neighborhood. We had to safeguard our territory. We have to build up our defenses, which we did. So in 1971, war between India and Pakistan was fully supported by the United States of America. At that time, Indian defense capability also increased. We became a very close strategic partner of the former Soviet Union. And when Pakistan was defeated, it was divided, Bangladesh became independent, India became the truly a superpower of South Asia, surrounded by small countries. But lo and behold, the beauty of India's growth and development at that time was we managed to have a green revolution. And because the green revolution, all food production and food crisis was resolved. Some of you may be thinking that even Indians are dying out of hunger. And this professor is saying that in early 70s, there was no longer food crisis. We produced the adequate amount of food. That is true. Even now in India, even now the statistics would tell you across all the major food grains and the fruits and vegetables and even livestock, India's position is in the top 5 list in the world. And this is not my data or the government of India data. This is not propaganda. This is World Food Organization, FAO's data, right? So in the 1970s, we resolved the food problem, no longer to be told by an outsider that we cannot give you food. You have to support our policy or else we won't. Terrible time. And 3 years after the 71 war, another beautiful thing happened for India. Not in the economy now, it is in the military. India tested a nuclear weapon device in Pokhran in 1974. Now, when the Western countries, which did not like India to be non-aligned, they wanted India to be part of their alliance system, they did not like India growing as a power. So from 1974 until very recently, all kinds of structures were erected to prevent India from emerging as a nuclear weapon power. Technology denial regimes were set up here, there, everywhere. But in spite of that, Indian capability, both economically and militarily, kept on increasing. And the most beautiful part of this evolution of India's engagement with the rest of the world was, in spite of the initial years of food crisis, tremendous amount of inequality in India, lots of problems was faced because of the language problem, unequal development in different parts of India, and different kind of political issues. Indian democracy matured. The poor people would go to vote and change government. The PhD in political science may not like to go to vote, but the poor people, the uneducated people would go to vote. And today, we find that this matured Indian democracy is so matured that the political consciousness that you have in every villages is remarkable. Even we can compete with the Western countries. How? I'll give you an example. A man in the village who doesn't have formal education, who is not able to put his signature, he doesn't know ABCD, but he has access to television. And in television debates and in television programs, he's watching what's happening around the world. He knows which political party who is saying what. And they develop a kind of political acumen and understanding, which is remarkable, and that is reflected in multiple times changing the government. That is, India becoming a resilient democracy, militarily powerful country, and economically developed to an extent where today, if you go by what the IMF president said recently and the World Bank president said recently, in the whole world, which is gripped by a recession, a potential big recession, India is a bright spot. This is what International Monetary Fund says and the World Bank says, not the government of India or you and me saying this, right? All right. Now, as India was again evolving, a very fantastic development took place. I don't know how old were you, dear students, in late 1980s and early 90s. History took place right under my nose as a student and teacher of world politics. History took place. I told you just now, the whole world system was evolved on the basis of a bipolar structure, US and USSR, two superpowers. Out of two superpowers, one superpower just collapsed like a house of cards. Every country has a military. And why do you need a military? To protect your territorial integrity, to keep your country united. Thousands and thousands of nuclear weapons in the former Soviet Union, thousands, could not protect the territorial integrity of the Soviet Union. A powerful military, a superpower, cracked up into 15 different countries. And the Cold War that I talked about, the competition between Soviet-led bloc and the American-led bloc got over. Cold War was over. Because one pole was dismantled. When that happened, people talked about a post-Cold War era. But the post-Cold War era was marked by a unipolar world order, just one pole in the world, unipolar world order. That was headed by the United States of America. What happened was, many Americans and quite a few Indians, they began to think that because India was not in the American camp, it was a close partner of the former Soviet Union. Why should America now look at India? America has won the Cold War. They're basking in the glory of winning the war. Why should they care for India? But that did not happen. America became more interested in India, became more keen to promote relationship with India. And why was that? Why was that? It was because 6 months before in the Soviet Union would collapse, in India we had a mini economic revolution. Before that, we had relatively a closed economic system. We had a socialistic pattern of development, right? So the Americans, the Europeans, they were not interested in doing business with India at that time. But because of mini economic revolution and opening of the Indian market, that time the Americans thought India is a large country, a resilient democracy, a huge market. That's why they wanted to build up ties with India for economic reasons. Please just give me 1 second. Can we go into space? Please don't say it publicly. Sorry about that. There's somebody at the door. So, because of the mini economic revolution in the world, the Americans, the Europeans all looked at India as a fast rising economy. And the middle class in India was expanding so much, roughly about 300 million of them, that even if a septipin would be sold over time, maybe in a few minutes' time, 3 million septipins would be sold. So it was the Indian market which got the attention. There were many countries which had the bandwagon effect. Because the Soviet Union collapsed, all of them jumped into the American group. But India came under the spotlight because of its economic revolution, which I call mini economic revolution. And one of the reasons why the Indian economy has gone higher and higher and higher today, and the IMF and World Bank are looking at India as a bright spot, is because of that mini economic revolution that we started after the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union. We have evolved like that. So today, in today's world, India is economically dynamic, a powerhouse, democratically still resilient, militarily very powerful. It has become a global player. Earlier, it was a global player as the head of the non-aligned movement. But right now, it is a global player. It is in a different sense altogether. When the Cold War ends, the bipolar structure ends, then there was no need to have a non-aligned foreign policy. But because of its own ability, now most of the major countries in the world are looking at India to make India a friend. So the handful of major powers that we have in the world, USA, Russia, Japan, China, European Union, all are quoting India. Now, this India is facing quite a few challenges. I'll briefly tell you about the challenges, then I'll stop so that you can raise questions. This is such a huge topic, I can talk for 5 hours. But let me give you the major challenges that we are facing today in the changing world. Then we can have a little discussion. At the moment, the world is changing in such a way that the 40 years of Cold War that we saw in the past, which shaped the global order and led to non-aligned movement, and India played a role there. Today, a new kind of Cold War has already started. And this is between United States and China. When the terrorist attack took place in the USA on 9/11 incident 2001, and the Americans got terribly involved in fighting the global war on terrorism, the Chinese were cleaning up in the international market. Chinese economy was galloping like a horse. So much so that today China has emerged as a new superpower. It is competing with the United States, not only economically, but also militarily. It is the number one importer in the world, number one exporter in the world, number one manufacturer in the world, number one consumer of luxurious goods in the world. And its military is also so powerful, and their treasury is so full. China has proposed a new system called BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. They are contributing billions and billions of dollars for building infrastructure in many parts of the globe, particularly in Asia, leading up to Europe and through Africa as well. So the Americans are worried. They have a new competitor. And this new competition is not having the old ideological rivalry, because China was also a communist country, but China adopted non-communist means of economic development. Most of the countries began to invest in China, including the Americans. So the old kind of Cold War cannot happen. In the old kind of Cold War, Soviet Union did not have much of trade with the Americans. They were running in parallel. But China and the US are so interdependent that they can fight a Cold War only at their own cost. It will be suicidal. But at the same time, as the Chinese would say, there cannot be two tigers on the same mountain. That means competition is bound to happen. In that competition, what should India do? This is a big dilemma. And not just India. Many countries which are otherwise alliance partner of the United States are facing the same problem. Because the way the global economic order changed and China's economy grew, about 100 plus countries look at China as a trade partner. So is India. And the United States, because of its military capability, and the US maintains about 700 military bases around the globe, these countries are now in a dilemma whether to support the security provider or to support the economic partner. This is a major challenge that India is facing. Second, for a long time, the Americans thought that Russia, the most important component of the former Soviet Union, is no longer a power. They can't do much. It is sunken in territory, and it is economically not dynamic. It is militarily also not as powerful as the USA. They ticked off Russia as a major power. But all of you must be reading in the newspapers and watching television on what's happening in Ukraine. When Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, invaded Ukraine, it created yet another geopolitical change. And every country has to be answerable, including India. Now, it is not only a question of India is deciding about which side to take, China or the US. After all, China, we have our own adversarial relationship. But the Ukraine war is a bigger challenge because Russia has been traditionally a defense partner of India. We have been buying Russian weapons, both for the Army, Air Force, Navy, in such a large chunk, roughly about 60-70% of the Indian weapon systems are Russian origin. So in this kind of background, when the Americans expect India to side with them, and India is not able to do, then how best to navigate in this difficult world is a big challenge for India. The third important challenge is next door, that is Pakistan. Pakistan has been a challenge for India, a bigger challenge for India throughout. Because we fought a war in 47-48, we fought another war in 65, another war in 71, another Kargil war in 99, and in the meantime, Pakistan became a nuclear weapon power. Pakistan has become an epicenter of global terrorism. Imagine a country like Pakistan, where terrorist networks are running everywhere, where the economy is not, over-dependent on foreign aid, and they have the nuclear weapons. Terrorism, bad economy, and nuclear weapons makes a very bad combo for a neighbor like Pakistan for India. It's a very big challenge. Because since 1989 until recently, we have been combating Pakistan-backed terrorism like anything. At the moment, of course, we don't have as many issues of terrorism because of a variety of other reasons, but the potentiality is still there. Anytime the terror attack can take place. The non-state actors have become more empowered, partly because of the information technology. They are using the emerging technology and they have empowered themselves. They're combating with the state. This is a major challenge for India. Then, of course, finally, like every other country, India is also facing the economic problem created by the pandemic. All of you know very well that 100 years ago, when there was a pandemic, India lost about 11 million people that died. In this pandemic, we are much better off. As the government would say, more than 5 lakhs people have died. We have been able to contain this. We have certain vaccines. We have provided vaccines to 100 plus countries. So in a way, we are better off. But the economic impact of the pandemic has affected every country in the world, including in India. Most of you must be, because of the lockdown, inside your room, inside your houses. And life was so pathetic that time. During that time, the loneliness, the mental health problem, all of you could not go to college or the school or the university. You lost so much of time in terms of educational gain and all. Then you have the industry not functioning well, including the entertainment industry, tourism industry, hotel industry. Movement of people was restricted. So economy across the board suffered so much. It will take quite a while for us to get back to the pre-pandemic time. And the way China is flexing its military muscle across the Taiwan Strait, in South China Sea, in East China Sea, along the Sino-Indian border, this new disruption in supply chain has also affected the flow of trade. So India has to build up an economy which is resilient and should not be affected by this kind of natural or man-made disasters that is afflicted. And it's a major challenge for all of us. How we are going to navigate in the future? There are many, many questions and issues, and we are deliberating upon all those things. The list is long, but the time is short. So I thought I would spend a few minutes with you to know what kind of questions coming to your mind. It's a mixed group. You're not foreign policy fellows. So I thought this is the best I could give in such a short time. And yet again, let me thank Professor Sharma for this opportunity and thank all of you for giving time and listening to my lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So we'll take some questions from the chat box, or if anybody is interested to ask any questions, you are welcome. Let me see the chat box. There are students from African countries, Rwanda. Omar, do you have got any question? Okay. Now, if anybody, you don't have any questions, so I have a question. Sir, what is it? You see, I am traveling continuously to African countries, and there I find a lot of Chinese investment, especially in road, whether it is the road from Entebbe to Kampala, or whether it is in Ghana. So you will find out a lot of Chinese investment. So I have also asked these questions to one diplomat, and he has answered me that our policy is different. Our foreign policy, we don't want to keep somebody in debt and take the mileage and put him into trouble. So vis-a-vis Chinese, this kind of dominion, or you can see China and India almost got this independence in 1947, around that period. But once upon a time, our economy was larger than the Chinese economy. But now China has such a huge economy, and we are lagging behind. So what are the reasons, one or two or three reasons, and what are the potentiality of we becoming a very large economy in near future? So do you want to change our foreign policy or in the domestic policy or whatever? As an expert, what do you suggest?
Okay, let me give you a few reasons, as you wanted to know a few reasons. You know, it was way back in 1978 that China began its economic reforms. We began our economic reforms in 1991, so late. Now, in 1978, when China started its economic reform, that time even the Soviet Union next year invaded Afghanistan, and second round of Cold War began. And India was following a closed economic policy. India was following import substitution policy. We would not like to have the foreign companies coming and doing business in India. We wanted our own companies to grow. But everybody knew that unless you have competition and challenges, you just cannot grow. If somebody would like to even build up the muscles, you need to do the push-ups, which we realized pretty late. That is one of the reasons why China is way ahead of us. Number two reason is China is a communist country. It is a totalitarian system, but the government control is 100% even on people. India is a democracy. The decision-making system, that is why, are two different things. Let me give you an example. When Hu Jintao, the Chinese president, came to Bangalore and you are talking to a group the way I'm talking to all of you, one person from the Infosys company stood up and asked him a question. President Hu Jintao, we have opened our economy and Chinese companies are coming and investing in India, but we don't have any space in your country. Hu Jintao said, oh, Infosys, done, sir, done. Can an Indian Prime Minister say done in a public meeting? He'll lose his job next day. We're a democracy. For everything, we have 5 Indians having 7 opinions, a lot of debate. Imagine the nuclear debate. In 1974, we conducted the nuclear test. For 25 years, people in this country debated whether to go for the bomb or not to go for the bomb. No other country did that, not even America. So this is India moving in the Indian way. This is the second reason. And the third reason is, we are a diverse country. There are publications in 100 languages. You have all kinds of religious groups in India. You have a complex caste system in India. We have the kind of colonial experience we had. China did not have that kind of colonialism and all. So running a country with so much diversity with a democratic system is not a joke. As Singapore, South Korea claiming their democracy is okay. China is by and large homogeneous and still they don't have a democracy. So the Indian system, India is like an elephant, China is like a dragon. India is moving slowly, steadily upwards. Then China has export-oriented industry like Taiwan, like South Korea. They are dependent on the stability of the global market. India is not. Indian market within India is so strong that the turbulence in the global market in the past also never affected India beyond a point. And imagine the pandemic, a government giving free ration to millions of people, breakfast, lunch, dinner, for so many months. So our problems are different, our issues are different, our decision making is different. That is why China, India, are also two different economies moving at their own pace. It was in the 16th century. Chinese and the Indian economy were global economy. Almost they accounted for 50% of the global output. Now they're moving in the same direction. Maybe by 2050, things will change. The credit must be given to Indians. For 200 years, British ruled India. Now, very recently, India replaced Great Britain as the 5th largest economy in the world. Now, Britain is number 6th. So, because of our domestic compulsions and past history, we are moving in a direction at our own pace. That is the reason. About Chinese investment in Africa, very dangerous. Very dangerous because China is following policy in such a way that one after the other countries are falling into a debt trap. Best example is next door in Sri Lanka. Sri Lankans came to India. We want to build a port in Hambantota. Indians said this is not going to be commercially viable. Then they went to China. China came with a lot of money. And the Chinese capital, the Chinese technicians, the Chinese engineers, Chinese laborers, they built the port. And they gave the loan. And Sri Lanka could not repay even the interest. Then Chinese government forced Sri Lanka to sign an agreement, 99 years of lease. Now Hambantota port is under the control of China. In Nepal, in Africa, they are doing similar kind of experiment. Ecuador in Latin America, they had a lot of problem. They were looking for some kind of loan. China gave only $12 billion. $12 billion. And in exchange, signed an agreement. For 99 years, Ecuador will sell oil only to China and to no other country. So the way Chinese companies are moving, they are even buying land in some of the African countries, which is so dangerous. I'll give you one example. In Tanzania, for example. In Tanzania, the Chinese went there in large number. And the chicken in the local market, even in India, you go to the market, somebody, you want to buy chicken, somebody will come and cut the chicken and peel up the skin and give it to you, weighing it. In Africa also they have that system. But when the Chinese came with a large amount of money, they built very sophisticated chicken market. Very neat and clean, well packed in nice boxes, AC boxes, air conditioning hall and all that. Some of the elite people in Africa felt very happy. Oh, wow, we are going now like Western countries. But the poor people who were making some money by selling chicken, they're out of jobs. Now they're complaining. So helping a country with capital is one thing. and then systematically exploiting them economically is a different thing. Let me say, China is a new imperial power. That is why it is a wake-up call for countries to be careful.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your beautiful explanation. We have got among our audience former ambassador of Uganda to India, Madam Grace Ekelo, and she has raised her hand. Madam Excellency, please ask your question.
Thank you, and I'm very glad to have sat in and listened to this excellent explanation of the India foreign policy and the challenges that it faces, and also the opportunities that there are for Africa in it. Very, very good exposition. Thank you very much, Excellency. Now, I just wanted to say that now I'm no longer speaking as, of course, as ambassador of Uganda, because you have a substantive ambassador there. But I wanted to share this perspective, which is that, you know, the Indian-Chinese relationship, particularly with Africa, is very different. Indians came to Africa a long time ago to do one thing or the other, and they decided to stay in Africa, blended in with the local population, became part of the local population, became part of the local economy, made these countries their countries. Many of them became citizens of their countries or have become citizens of those countries. And therefore, they felt that they were at home. Now, the Chinese came more recently to Africa, more aggressively to Africa. And instead of making their relationship with Africans a people-people relationship, they made it a people-power relationship. So they used the continent of Africa to bolster their power on the international stage. And this is why you find that the Chinese and the Africans do not share the same kind of relationship that Indians and Africans have. I just wanted to put this to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your observation and comment. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much. Now, Omar is a student from Rwanda. Omar, you have raised your hand. Omar?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you are. Please ask.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, to give me this opportunity. So first of all, I would like to appreciate our guest of honor. Sir, my question I want to ask is about Pakistan and India. And my first I have two questions. My first question is this. Why the conflict between India and Pakistan has never got solution yet for many years? That is my first question. So my second question is, what remedy would be suggested in order to reduce the tension in relationship between India and Pakistan?
What is your second question? Can you repeat?
Let me rephrase it. The question is like this. Okay, Omar, I am rephrasing it. Why the conflict between India and Pakistan has never got solution yet for many years? The first question. And the second question is, what remedies would you suggest in order to reduce the tension in the relationship between India and Pakistan?
All right. You see, the fundamental reason why India-Pakistan relationship is not getting resolved even after 70 years plus is because Pakistan was created under a very false ideology. Muhammad Ali Jinnah wanted a country, a nation in the name of Islam. Whereas we argued that religion cannot be the basis of a country. So today, you see, we have the second largest Muslim population in the world in India, next to Indonesia, and we are having a very vibrant democracy in India. Whereas, although Pakistan has a Muslim majority people there, the country has failed because Islam cannot be the basis of a state. It has to be multicultural. South Asian civilization has been so multicultural, and people were living together for centuries through ups and downs, through invasions, through wars and all. But there was civilizational linkages. For example, anybody who reads Indian history and talks about Harappan civilization 5,000 years ago, Harappa is in Pakistan. Now, Pakistan, there was no Pakistan before 1947. Now, Pakistanis are saying they have a 5,000-year history. So, this is the wrong notion. Now, again, it was elitist. I do not blame the common people of Pakistan. They're very nice. They're just like us. It is the Pakistani political elite, particularly the landed aristocracy and some industrialists, most particularly in Punjab, who are running Pakistan. 70 to 80% of the Pakistani army are only from the Punjab in Pakistan. And that is why there is a revolt in Balochistan, in Pakhtunkhwa, in Sindh. I'll not be surprised if Pakistan is going to face this kind of vociferous tendencies yet again in the future, because the economy is failing. So what is the best way to resolve the problem? The second question. The best way is religion should not be used for political purposes. Pakistan wanted to stage a quote-unquote a jihad in Kashmir, so stupid fellows, simply because the Americans told them that godless communism from Soviet Union has invaded Afghanistan. Now let us come together and finish communism. So there was 10 years war in Afghanistan. Now, when Soviet Union got defeated and then they withdrew the forces, Pakistanis thought they would reenact what happened in Afghanistan in Kashmir. If the Soviet Union could be defeated, what is India? Since July 89, around the same time the Soviet Union left Afghanistan, until very recently, not a day would pass without Pakistanis using some terror network in Kashmir to kill the ordinary people. So that is the main problem. Now, there is a slow realization within Pakistan. The common people think very differently, but the elite, they don't. The solution is this. Kashmir has become such an intractable problem that the best way is live and let live and not create war-like situation anymore. And who lost in the process? The Kashmiri people. Now, when the government of India is trying to bring back certain amount of stability, not allow terrorism to take root, instead of guns trying to produce more butter, we are lucky that we have been able to contain the Pakistani cross-border terrorism. But Pakistanis have to listen and understand and change the dynamics. It will be done. Like, for example, in Afghanistan, Pakistan in every meeting said, we don't want India to resolve the Afghan problem. When Afghanistan problem was going on, India spent about $2 trillion in Afghanistan for what? For building roads, for building bridges, and the electric line, and the parliament building, and the hospitals, and the universities. What was Pakistan doing? Pakistan was supporting Haqqani group. Haqqani group were taking Pakistani money and weapons and killing Americans and the NATO forces. So this is the problem. This is the problem. And when there was a Swat Valley operation in Pakistan against the Pathans, and the Pathans from Swat Valley came down, the Punjabis said, you cannot enter Punjab. Persona non grata. See? So the real problem is in Punjab, not in Pakistan. We live so happily with Indian Muslims, Indonesian Muslims, Maldivian Muslims, Bangladeshi Muslims. India does not have a Muslim problem. India has a Pakistan problem. And that is it. Sorry, I became sentimental a little bit.
Thank you, sir. No. You explained very nicely. So we are left with 2 minutes. We'll take a last question. If anybody will ask a last question. Anybody? Okay. So it was really normally the speaker speaks for a longer time, but and we ran short of the interactions. But the interaction was excellent after this talk, and the talk was so absorbing, and it touches so many facets of the diplomacy and other things, that it was really very, very nice to hear you, sir. So on behalf of the university, on behalf of the outreach cell, I extend, I am really grateful to you, and on behalf of the university, I thank you once again. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste. Thank you so much. God bless all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.